Today on Notsam Wrestling, John Cena decides it's time to start making some masterpieces. Becky Lynch joins the side of Seth Rollins. But are we going to get the match that we all know that we want to see? We'll talk about the Raja Jackson incident. We're going to talk about Sami Zayn winning the United States Championship and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling post Clash in Paris, and welcome to the conversation really beginning for where we're going with WWE in the fall. And I think that starts with John Cena. I think that we realize now that, like, there's no more playing games with this John Cena. I think during the post show, John Cena said there's like 8 more appearances, maybe. And we know we've got Chicago on Friday already, so he's going to be at SmackDown in Chicago. I believe he's going to be on a Raw. He's going to be at WrestlePalooza in Indianapolis. He's going to be in Perth. Could be 2 dates in Perth. Then he's got Survivor Series, presumably. Then presumably Saturday night's main event in December, which was announced on the Peacock press release. That's 7, if all of those are accurate. And maybe there'll be one, I guess there'll be one more plugged in there at some point. And, you know, I mean, I think there is a little bit of denial that might be chiming in, because I feel like now more than ever, I'm getting people, because, you know, we are in a fantasy booking space. I am a person that people share fantasy bookings with, and I enjoy that because it's something I enjoy doing. But there's so many people, you know, they break the rules. They create hypotheticals that just aren't going to happen. And one of those things that I feel like keeps coming up is this idea that they go, well, what if John Cena says, I'm not done, and goes till WrestleMania? There are so many people that are concocting these ideas of what if John Cena continues on and goes all the way till WrestleMania. Maybe like he finishes this year and just has one more match at WrestleMania, just one more WrestleMania, and it ain't happening. You know, I mean, this is the wrestling retirement that has been afforded more integrity than any other. He was given an entire year to tell a story, which is something that's never been done before, and has said over and over and over again, as a babyface, as a heel, on wrestling shows, on civilian shows, he has said he is done wrestling in the ring at the end of the year. He allowed this year's WrestleMania, the previous WrestleMania, WrestleMania 40, to be advertised as John Cena's final WrestleMania. He's allowed, and WWE has allowed, that Peacock put out a press release when they're talking about their new TV deal that says part of what Peacock is getting as the WWE's PLEs are moving over to the ESPN app is that Peacock gets exclusive rights to Saturday night's main event. So you will only be able to see Saturday night's main event on Peacock. And when they announced that, one of the things they announced was that includes John Cena's farewell match. There is, every town got a T-shirt. I don't know, by the way, if Indianapolis is going to get, because technically Indianapolis got a John Cena farewell shirt at the Royal Rumble. They didn't know WrestlePalooza was coming. So there is going to be a second John Cena goodbye to Indianapolis. That is true. But Royal Rumble was at the baseball stadium, and I think WrestlePalooza is in an arena. So it's a different building, right? But yes, he is saying goodbye to Indianapolis twice. But he's not adding dates as he says goodbye to Indianapolis, and he's certainly not adding time to the calendar. That's been the prevailing thing, that this calendar is going to run out. And I think that what we're getting now, man, I've got to tell you, there is a part of me that goes, as much as the heel run of John Cena was disappointing, and as much as it really did not work, I think that in a way, it's made this part all the more sweeter. The idea that we get this this part of John Cena where we can really appreciate him as a babyface. Now, we wanted to appreciate him as a babyface, and he went on. Another thing that he said I thought was interesting on the post show of Clash in Paris was he talked about how one of the problems and one of the ways that he knew, he didn't say that the heel turn didn't work because The Rock didn't come back or because the story didn't pay off or because this promo, whatever. He said it was because he got in the ring with wrestlers and he got cheered. That he got in the ring with Randy and they were kind of cheering for him. He got in the ring with Cody at WrestleMania. They were kind of cheering for him. He got in the ring, and it's like, if it's not working, then it's not working. And he basically said, like, you can tell whatever story you want, but you can't fight against the energy of the audience. You can try, you can kind of pivot over here. You can go, well, what if we tell the story this way? But eventually they're going to tell you, no, that's not working for us. And when they do, it's like, okay, you can't fight that riptide. And I think that the fact that was proven and the audience proved that they said, no, this is what we want, has at least made, and maybe I'm just saying that because I don't know, like, if we don't get that heel run, which had the truth match or I guess truth matches and the Randy match and the Cody match and the Punk match. He brought up the Punk match in Saudi too. Do we get these matches during this second half of the year, really, second or third, I'd say, the third of the year? Do we get all these that are classics? Does he have the inspiration and the motivation to give us classics? Because I don't know that we would get a year of classics, but you know what? We're getting the last third of the year, it appears, as all classics. The first classic came with Cody Rhodes. And that was the sort of, yesterday he decided he was a babyface again, so let's see what this looks like. And all of a sudden he gives us one of the great street fights ever, as well as this great poetic ending and hugging Cody and passing the torch. And then this weekend at Clash in Paris, he gave Logan Paul a classic, but it was a completely different classic. First of all, I can't say enough about the fact that it was for all intents and purposes, clean match. There was no Logan Paul chicanery. There were no drones. There was no brass knuckles. There was no, weirdo Logan Paul lackey at ringside throwing prime bottles or whatever it was. There was none of that stuff. It was just Logan Paul trying his best and John Cena trying his best and getting a great match out of it. And I think that, there are some, and I think they're wrong, but there are some that believe that Logan Paul should have won the match. And I will tell you two things. Number one, John can't lose all these matches. Like, you can't, he doesn't have 9 torches that he can just give to everybody. We've already seen what happens when John Cena loses too much. The losses don't do anything for the people that get the victories. Solo Sikoa should have gained so much from beating John Cena, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. Now, Solo Sikoa is in a great spot right now, and I think he's in I think Solo Sikoa is doing amazing. But he doesn't carry this weight like he beat John Cena. Austin Theory's the same thing, and we can keep going backwards. I mean, John Cena has to be a mountain that you have to climb and conquer. And you can't do that if everybody gets to conquer the mountain, because otherwise it's a bunny hill. You have to give those victories to other people sparingly. What you can do in the meantime is, to use the old wrestling phase, allow people to get over without going over. Logan Paul pulled off an absolute classic. Logan Paul did moves that he's never done before. Logan Paul told a story in the ring. Logan Paul spent a long time in the ring with John Cena. And at the end of the night, he lost, but he wrestled a great match without props, without set decorations, without distractions. Can you wrestle Are you a wrestler? Can you do this without the world saying like, hey, did you see when he put on meta glasses and jumped off the top rope? Hey, did you see when he caught that drone and did this? Hey, did you see when none of it? None of it. Did you when Cross threw those brass knuckles in and then you grab them and you get it's just a wrestling match. And he had a great wrestling match. And to me, Logan Paul benefits tremendously from it. And whoever fights John Cena next and beats John Cena eventually will benefit tremendously from it. I also thought that what was beautiful about it was that we only have, as I said, so much time left with John Cena. And we're not going to get all of the matches that we want to get. You know, in these 8 or 9 appearances, if we get 4 matches, that would be a lot. We'll get a match in Indy. We got to get a match in Perth. I kind of hope it's War Games at Survivor Series because he's never done a War Games match. And then his last, so 4 is probably the amount of matches that you're going to get. Maybe they'll sneak a TV match in there. You know, I would love it if they were able to sneak a TV match in with like Dom Mysterio. Like just do it at a SmackDown towards the end of this run. You know, because I think that would be huge. But really, you got, you know, Dom, you've got Brock, you've got the last match, you've got War Games. So maybe you've got really one more match. And it's like, how do you now start to not only tell the story of what's going on today, but now that John Cena is on his victory lap, he's not the champion anymore, he's not a heel anymore, it's victory lap time. How do you take that victory lap and tell the story that you want to tell? And to me, the story of John Cena versus Logan Paul was such a bigger story about John Cena and about the people who have influenced John Cena and inspired John Cena and been important to John Cena. And Logan Paul helped tell that story. I knew that we were in for something special when Logan Paul runs up to John Cena and hits him with a European uppercut. And it wasn't just any European uppercut. Michael Cole said, a Cesaro-like European uppercut. I said, that's interesting. You had, and this is kind of just what I caught, and I'm sure there's more in there. You had Logan Paul hitting a European uppercut like Cesaro. You had Logan Paul hitting a zigzag. It's Dolph Ziggler's finish. Who, by the way, Cesaro and Dolph Ziggler were both 2 of the people that were named when John Cena did his version of the CM Punk shoot promo, you know, the pipe bomb. And I think, too, by the way, that whole CM Punk story is absolutely crucial and important. The fact that John Cena got to respond to the pipe bomb and have another match with CM Punk, I think that whether you like the heel run or not, the Cena pipe bomb and the match with Punk are, if that's all if all we get out of the heel run really is the moment at Elimination Chamber and that CM Punk set of moments, to me, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. But also John Cena was tributing people. John Cena, you know, doing the Code Red, which, I mean, when was the last time you saw John Cena do a Code Red? John Cena hitting Logan Paul with the Styles Clash, which, I mean, couldn't have been a more blatant tip of the hat to AJ Styles and the rivalry that AJ Styles and John Cena had, and that rivalry being a rivalry that opened people's eyes to how great of a wrestler John Cena really was. I love that John Cena hit the end of days. You know, I don't think people talk about Baron Corbin enough. I think the world of Baron Corbin, but, you know, maybe I'm a little biased, but I've thought highly of Baron Corbin for a long time. And I think that Baron Corbin did a tremendous amount of good work and was stuck in an unwinnable position when, during a time in WWE when creative was not at an all-time great, he was doing 8 segments of TV every single week, had to call himself a constable and dress and wrestle in like a suit vest. You know, how is anybody going to win in that scenario? All you have to do is look at his run in NXT and tell me, Look at what he did in Paris, France, and tell me that Corbin didn't have it. And obviously John Cena felt the same way because he dropped him with an end of days. I think tributing wrestlers that he knows he may not or will not get to face, but letting them know, like, as I'm reflecting on the year, on the year and the career that I've had in WWE, I'm thinking about you guys. And then I think allowing his kind of match to be a platform for Logan Paul to have this match that Logan Paul needed to have, I think is really, really good. I think that what's great is that, first of all, I want to speak about Logan Paul. I think it's very interesting that Logan Paul, there was a fan with a Logan Paul sign there was a fan with a Logan Paul sign that Logan Paul saw on his way to the ring. And Logan Paul went and grabbed the sign and, like, big upped the fan. Like, was like, yeah, held up the sign like, this is my guy. And I love the idea because there are some heels that, like, they just, they decide they're a wrestling heel. And so whether you like me or hate me, I'm just going to heel on you. And Logan Paul is kind of this unique character, which I think more reflects to, like, heels on the internet. There are, like, people on the internet that are heels, and part of why they're successful and make as much money as they do is because people hate them so much. But part of what makes people hate them, and another part of what makes them successful, is they have followers that love them, and they love their followers. They don't heel on their followers. They heel on the people who don't like them. And that makes the people who don't like them go crazy. And Logan Paul is doing that in wrestling. Logan Paul is only healing on the people who don't like him. Logan Paul is babyfacing the people who do like him. Logan Paul is embracing the people who embrace him. And number one, if Logan Paul ever turns babyface, that's going to make that transition smoother. But number two, it does make it kind of a more relatable, but also a more hateable character. Because if you hate someone like Logan Paul, and then you look at young people liking him, you're going to hate him even more for the fact that he's convincing these young people to like him. I think that what's going to be interesting is we got a different story in this match than we got in the Cody match. It was a completely different match, but a masterpiece. Those are two masterpiece matches that John Cena had. And it's kind of going to become the expectation. I think that while we don't know officially, I think a Brock Lesnar match is beyond likely. I think as we start predicting the WrestlePalooza card, a Brock Lesnar match is at the top of people's minds for sure. And I wonder what that match is going to look like. Because obviously, when I say John Cena and Brock Lesnar, now they had a bunch of matches, but I don't think you think back to early days. I don't think you think back to OVW. I don't even think that you think back to when Brock Lesnar first came back from the UFC after John Cena lost to The Rock at WrestleMania 28. I think when I say Brock Lesnar and John Cena, you think of the SummerSlam match after WrestleMania 30. You think of John Cena being the guy who was the first victim of Suplex City. You think of the beating that Brock Lesnar gave John Cena that was so bad and such a squash, it made us in the audience uncomfortable. Brock Lesnar versus John Cena at SummerSlam that year, literally, it was like we didn't know how to react to it because it made us uncomfortable. Like, to the point where people were like, I didn't like that. But it was this very unique feeling where it was Brock. So it was almost like I didn't like that for all the right reasons. Some would still argue all the wrong reasons. Some still think that the Brock thing is not, that he shouldn't have beaten The Undertaker and he shouldn't have squashed John Cena. I disagree with that statement, but I think that that's a valid argument to have with anybody. But I wonder, so with that in mind, that is the thought that you go to with Brock Lesnar and John Cena, I wonder how this Brock Lesnar and John Cena story is going to reflect on that. I wonder if John Cena gets the you-know-what kicked out of him again. And I wonder if John Cena loses or if he's able to squeak by again. I wonder if this goes 2 matches, if this is our WrestlePalooza match, but also the match that we get in Perth. Or if this is just for WrestlePalooza and the next story starts in Perth because there's only a limited time left for John Cena. I also wonder, is Brock Lesnar back? Is Brock Lesnar going to do this story with John Cena and then after the John Cena story is over, move on to somebody else? Or is Brock Lesnar just back to be part of this John Cena run? I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that question. I think we're going to find out sooner rather than later. But I think all of that's up in the air. I would have to imagine that Brock Lesnar's going to be back for longer, only because he's so box office. Like, start a story with somebody else, like, the idea of Brock Lesnar and CM Punk doing something. The idea of Brock Lesnar eventually doing something with Gunther. The idea of, okay, you want to tell this story of Jey Uso being aggressive. What if he gets in there with Brock Lesnar? Like, there are many different ways to do this with Brock Lesnar, and all of those are box office. It's just a question of what's the plan with Brock Lesnar right now, and I don't think we know. But I do feel like that announcement has to come at SmackDown in Chicago, right, on the 5th. I think that, and I think it's kind of the perfect place. And I don't know, maybe Brock will be there. He's not advertised to be there. Maybe he shows up to stare down John Cena, because otherwise, do you just have John Cena cut a promo on Brock Lesnar? And Chicago's a great place for Brock Lesnar to show up as a surprise. Or do you just have Nick Aldis finally tell John Cena, look, I was trying to tell you 2 weeks ago. Brock's ready for it. John Cena's advertised for a big match in Indianapolis at WrestlePalooza, but that's all that they've said. I think I got to believe it's going to be Brock Lesnar. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but there's a lot up in the air with the Cena-Brock Lesnar thing. I would imagine that has to be where it's going next. But the fascination to me, I feel like the story has to reflect on the Brock Lesnar-John Cena match from that SummerSlam. And John Cena, actually, if I could plug my own stuff, go on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel here. You can watch the interview that I did with John Cena a couple years ago, where he talks about the match with Brock Lesnar and finding out what the plan for that match was. And I mean, it's one of my favorite stories that a wrestler has ever told me in an interview. So check that out. And also, very nice of John. First of all, for John Cena to make up with that Belgium kid all weekend long. But also, I think the Belgium kid probably went to the Lyon show legit, the SmackDown show. But those are the VIP seats. Those are the VIP seats that he was in at Clash in Paris. My man was in the whining and dining seats at Clash in Paris. Those are the Netflix executive seats. John Cena hooked my Belgium kid buddy up. So congrats to him. What a year that kid has had, too. Oh, boy. That's going to be a tough come down. What's he probably? 9, 10 years old? Teens are going to be rough, but he can always look back on this year. And he had new gear. He didn't have to wear his Belgium gear again. He got the Paris gear. So, good stuff. The other thing to me that made headlines, and was certainly something I was thinking about at Clash in Paris, was obviously Becky Lynch coming in to help Seth Rollins, surprising a lot of people. Now, the idea, and people will say, well, I told you that there was going to be Becky might help Seth Rollins. But I mean, in terms of like saying like, okay, Becky's going to come in this fatal 4-way in the main event. She's going to be the person. I don't know many people I don't know anybody that had this coming and had it in a serious way that was like, yeah, this wasn't a prediction. This was a surprise. Becky Lynch coming out. So Heyman, of course, they set it up beautifully, and I talked about this on the emergency podcast that we dropped here on the podcast feed right after the PLE. Becky Lynch, she shows up at the end, but the story of this main event was told kind of all night. Paul Heyman getting choked out after the match between Roman Reigns and Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed, a Braun Breaker, taking out Roman Reigns, thus getting kicked out of the building. Paul Heyman is now in the hospital. And what can we do? Everybody's stuck. And Seth Rollins is now on his own. And Seth Rollins says, I can handle it on my own. There's no problem. Now, that's where the questions start to begin. Was the behavior on the part of Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, was that something that was a plan from the beginning? Did they get thrown out of the building because of negligence? And then, they get thrown out of the building, they're negligent on it, and now Seth has to figure it out on his own? Because that's two separate stories. And I don't think enough people are talking about it because instead we're talking about what, we should also be talking about, which is the potential mixed tag that this could result in. But I think, we're going to find out either this was a plan all along by the Vision, and they knew, like, we'll take out Roman, and worst case scenario, we get thrown out of the building, no problem, Becky will be there. Or they got thrown out of the building. Seth is going, what the hell, I can't count on my guys. Here comes Becky Lynch. This could be an expansion of the Vision, or this could be a turn where Seth and Becky start doing their own thing. And what happens if they stay in the Vision? Don't you think that there will be some kind of separation? If Seth and Becky are doing their own thing and it's all in the Vision, I mean, Becky Lynch doesn't need Paul Heyman. If Becky Lynch is masterminding things for Seth Rollins, does Paul Heyman join them? Or does it become one of those things where it's like Seth and Becky are in charge and Paul Heyman is really just there kind of mentoring Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed? I don't mind that. I think that the Vision could use a refresh and a definition on who everybody is. I don't think that connection between Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins was ever solidified the way that the connection between Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman and Braun Breaker and Paul Heyman, I believe, has been solidified. And I like the idea of the group being sort of like, okay, Becky and Seth work together and Heyman works with the younger guys. Now, at the same time, this could be a short-term thing. This could be Becky coming in to help Seth Rollins just to lead us to a big mixed tag match at WrestlePalooza, and then Becky and Seth are going to go back to going their own ways. It's all possible. I don't know. I think, before we get into all of that, I think that this match was really, really good for LA Knight. The four-way was really, really good for LA Knight because LA Knight came across like a star. When LA Knight got his chance to shine, the crowd fully got behind him. When LA Knight was putting Seth Rollins up on that table and everything, you really you felt the momentum from the audience behind LA Knight. And to me, it felt like LA Knight belonged in that conversation of champions, which is the best that you could ask for LA Knight. And I thought it was really good for Jey Uso too. I thought Jey Uso did a fabulous job of being that more serious version of Jey Uso that, quite frankly, a lot of fans have been asking for when it comes to Jey. A lot of fans have been asking Jey Uso to kind of become, and he doesn't have to give up the yeet in the version that we saw on the show. He can still yeet and everything, but the reality is that whether he's friends with CM Punk or he's friends with LA Knight or he's a good guy or he's a bad guy, ultimately he's in this match to win the championship. And he's done kind of being a right-hand man. He's done being someone's friend. He's ready to be the guy. And then obviously for Punk, this becomes one of those things where I think that Punk ends up going forward with this Seth Rollins story. But I don't think that it's the typical kind of, now we're leading to a CM Punk Seth Rollins singles match again. I think now we've got a scenario where we've got to do a mixed tag, right? And the whole world, the wrestling world, is going, this is it. AJ Lee is it. And if you want to make a massive match for WrestlePalooza, if you want to do a show that will have the entire wrestling world watching your show, if you want to do a show that will convince WWE fans that are skeptical to buy an ESPN app and pay for it and go, I cannot miss this premium live event. You've already got Cena versus Brock, hypothetically. You've already got maybe Cody versus Drew, hypothetically. If not, Drew versus Randy. But then to say AJ Lee is going to come back? CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch? That's what we're all thinking, and I am speaking strictly as a fan. It is something I very much want to see. And of course, you could go in other directions, right? CM Punk has plenty of public friends in the women's division. Whether it's Bayley, I don't know, if you somehow get to Roxanne Perez, even though she's a heel, you could do whatever. You could even do CM Punk and Nikki Bella if you wanted to. But it's not going to be what people are asking for. It's not going to be what people are thinking. It's going to make people scratch their heads. And if you weren't going to do AJ Lee, you could have had Becky Lynch screw over anyone else. You could have had Becky Lynch screw over Jey Uso. You could have had Becky Lynch screw over LA Knight, but she came out in a mask and low-blowed CM Punk. She stood there and watched as her husband stomped CM Punk's head into a steel chair. Because of Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins pinned CM Punk at Clash in Paris. And it was Becky Lynch who came out and did that. I mean, the only revenge that I can see, it has to be AJ Lee, right? I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful it is. Now, look, I don't know. I don't know if they realized, like, how instantly connective this Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch on-screen pairing would be for fans like myself, and I think I speak for a bunch of us. Some of you may not have liked it or whatever, but, like, there's just something about who the Seth Rollins character is right now and who the Becky Lynch character is right now. And Seth Rollins being the world heavyweight champion and a master manipulator, and Becky Lynch being the women's intercontinental champion, but also being a master manipulator. This version of Becky Lynch has been manipulating everyone and everything. So the idea of these two pairing up, it's very McMahon-Helmsley regime, except Becky Lynch is the best female wrestler on the roster. And I'm not talking about bell to bell. I'm not talking about in ring. I'm talking about Becky Lynch, who main evented WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like, you've got a scenario where, and the thing about the Vision and Seth and all this stuff is you want it to build to a point where it feels like a group that is indestructible, but it hasn't built to that point yet. They've been able to win a lot, but it's also been exposed that if you can even up the numbers situation somehow, they are beatable. But Rollins and Becky together feels very unbeatable to me. That feels very like, I don't know how we're gonna combat this. And to me, I just don't know, other than CM Punk versus AJ Lee. And by the way, even if AJ Lee's coming back for one match, Becky Lynch pinning AJ Lee, do you know the heat that would get? If Becky was able to do her Lynch pin, that's what Wade Barrett said it was. That backslide, the fact that Becky Lynch, that's why this version of Becky Lynch is working so well with Seth Rollins. The fact that this version of Becky Lynch has a backslide as her move, and that's what we're going with, and it's working. She did it at Evolution. She called it the slickest finish. Wasn't that the triple threat? And she did it again here in this Nikki Bella match. It leaves everybody just frustrated. If she's able to backslide AJ Lee, now look, you could also have Nikki Bella come out, interfere in the match. AJ Lee pins Becky Lynch. We get a happy ending. Move on. AJ Lee goes home. Now Becky goes and continues her rivalry with Nikki Bella. That's possible. But I don't want this Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins thing to end. And I've not seen a promo. I've not seen anything. All I've seen is the moment at Clash in Paris. But I don't want the Seth and Becky thing to end. We'll see how it turns out. Guys, we're going to get back to it, but I wanted to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. I mean, really good. It's easy to get started. You just choose more or less on player stat projections. If you pick right, you could cash in. I mean, it's so like it's addictive. They got it for everything. They got it for soccer. I'm going through like 82.5 passes attempted. I'm gonna go less on that one. How about this one? How about Hwang Min Son, 3.5 shots? I'll go more on 3.5 shots. That's it. If you pick right, guess what? You could cash in. With Prize Picks, cashing out is so quick. They offer Venmo, they offer Apple Pay, they offer MasterCard, and more. And Prize Picks, it even has Flex Pay, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't 100% perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It is such a good time. And like I said, being right, it feels good. It feels even better when you get paid. Download the app today and use code NOTSAM to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code NOTSAM to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Now, there was another story involving Becky Lynch that was kind of like top of mind before any of this Becky Lynch Clash in Paris stuff started. And that was the Becky Lynch Birmingham controversy. Yes, Becky Lynch, of course, went on Monday Night Raw last week and said the only good thing that came out of here died a month ago. But in fairness to Ozzy Osbourne, he had the good sense to move to Los Angeles, a proper city, because if I lived in Birmingham, I died too. Now listen, regardless of what city we live in, we're all going to die. Everybody will be dead at some point. So you could live in Los Angeles, you could live in Birmingham. At some point, you will die. And that's just what it is. You know, moving to a city is not going to avoid that unfortunate fact of life, but it is an unfortunate fact of life. Well, the late, great Ozzy Osbourne. And now when I heard this, I'm an Ozzy fan, you know, and I know many, many Ozzy fanatics. And not only was I not offended, I could not imagine one being offended by this who is a fan of Ozzy. Of course, I'm not a personal friend. I wasn't a personal friend of the late, great Ozzy Osbourne, certainly not a member of his family. And Kelly Osbourne, his daughter, who you remember from the Osbournes reality show, was furious about this. She put up an Instagram. She said, Becky Lynch, you are a disrespectful dirtbag. Birmingham would not piss on you if you were on fire. Hashtag Birmingham forever. Shame on the WWE for allowing such things to be said about my father and his home. Which surprised me, to tell you the truth, because like when she said it honestly, like, it felt like even Birmingham kind of enjoyed the fact that she was, you know, being Becky, that she was being her. You know what I mean? That she was being this version of the Becky Lynch heel that says these horrible things and you boo her, but on a lot of levels you kind of enjoy everything that she's doing. You know, like it's wrestling, and it felt very wrestling when she did it, to me anyway. But then, you know, of course, the minute this controversy started getting stirred up, people started coming up with reasons that Becky should apologize, and then there were rumors that and I didn't repeat myself there. The rumors were that there were rumors that Becky Lynch was going to have to do a public apology, that she would apologize, which I do not see that happening. It's always possible, you know. I don't know. Maybe there were lines crossed that I was unaware of, but it doesn't seem like that line was truly crossed. However, I do think that this is something that Becky Lynch, I think that not only should she get on Monday Night Raw and address what she did with Seth Rollins, but why not address this too? I mean, if mainstream is talking about you, all press is good press to an extent. You know, it's one of those things where I think Becky has been doing a lot of Donald Trump work in her promos. You know, there's a lot of Trumpisms in the way that she speaks, in her mannerisms. I think she should, this one, maybe borrow from Conor McGregor, another Irish human who is very good with a microphone, Conor McGregor, and have Becky say, you know, there's a lot that people have been asking me to apologize for. There's a lot that I've done and said that people have taken offense to, whether it's last week in Birmingham, whether it was over the weekend at Clash in Paris and CM Punk and the people of France. And I would like to say to the entire continent of Europe, I'd like to publicly apologize for absolutely nothing. I mean, come on, it's right there waiting for you. I just want to hear it personally. I just think it's just something I'd like to hear. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But hey, man, that's just my perspective on it. I did see everybody posted their perspective. This And I haven't had a show since then. I didn't want to do an emergency podcast necessarily because our show is more in the spirit of fun, and this was anything but fun. But Raja Jackson, who's the son of Rampage Jackson, had a ton of controversy around him. So I guess Raja Jackson was at this show that Knox Pro was putting on, which is a wrestling school. And Raja was live streaming the whole thing. So not only do we have this grand controversy, but there's video of everything. And I've watched a lot of video. I've watched many interviews. I've listened to a lot of different people's takes on it, a lot of pro wrestlers' takes on it, a lot of wrestling analysts' takes on it, a lot of people who don't even watch wrestling, their takes on it, all the clips that were clipped from the live stream of all the different incidents that happened, the interviews with the people who were there. I mean, I watched, a little bit of everything to just kind of wrap my head, because on first look at this thing, it's hideous. I mean, absolutely hideous. And the more I looked into this, the more I realized that there's nothing complicated here. And you can try to complicate it, and you can try to act like pro wrestling is this complicated thing that's so difficult to figure out, but it's really not complicated. It's really not difficult to figure out, and there's nothing unique here that happened. I don't think, in my personal opinion, that it requires any perspective other than an ounce of humanity and a set of eyeballs to see how far out of line Raja Jackson was in this whole thing. So, in the backstory behind all this, I guess he's doing this live stream, right? And I guess Raja Jackson gets dunked on a lot. And I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. I'm in my own head thinking I am. I'm probably not, but I apologize if I am. But from what I read, they said he gets dunked on his live stream and people get in his head or whatever. And look, I mean, there's a whole other conversation to be had about people who do live streaming and digital content that is all based around people dunking on them and haters, except it doesn't matter because they're still getting numbers and engagement, so they just keep doing it. It's a toxic thing. It's bad for any person who's doing it, in my opinion. I think generally IRL streaming is tough. It's hard. I mean, there's a few people, the top tier of people seem to have some kind of healthy way to deal with it. But I for most human beings, I think that IRL streaming, which is just like having a camera on you all the time and having people commenting on every single thing that you're doing, I don't see how it can create good mental health, but that's just me. So in the video that I saw, Raja Jackson is at this Knox Pro show, and they're backstage before the show, and this wrestler named Psycho Stu hits him on the head with a beer can. He does not hit him on the head with a beer bottle. He does not break a bottle over his head. He does not hit him in the head with a full beer can. He hits him in the head with an empty aluminum beer can. Is this a nice thing to do? No. Is it respectful? No. But there has never been a scenario where anybody who is trying to fight somebody tries to fight them with an empty aluminum can. They don't it anybody. It just wouldn't, and wasn't even the top of it with the ring in that's a little bit harder. No, it was the side of it. Clearly there was a miscommunication. And, and that's when you could hear in the background of the video people saying, Stu, he's not a worker. And maybe there was some miscommunication there. And of course, Mr. Jackson, young Mr. Jackson, seemed to get very offended by this. And that's fine if he gets offended by it. And then there's another wrestler that is telling Raja to get a receipt on him. And again, all this talk of receipts and everything, it's like, we're not talking about Portland in 1978. We're talking about a indie show in 2025. Okay, let's not get into, well, you got to protect what? What are we talking about? It's an indie school show in 2025. Okay, so Raja is in the audience of this show, and he jumps in the ring during a match. Now, from my eyes, it appears that this is something that was planned. People don't go like, oh my God, what's he doing when he gets in there? It appears that this was a planned spot. but he kind of picks Psycho Stu up with a double leg takedown and brings him down to the mat. And it's not the safest thing. It's not the greatest double leg, but for somebody that, by the way, Roger Jackson is not a pro wrestler. He's an MMA fighter's son, Rampage. So, like, the idea that his double leg takedown was not safe or what, that's neither here nor there to me. The problem is that he starts punching Psycho Stu in the face as hard as he can. And Psycho Stu is unconscious. And he's unconscious very quickly. He's either made unconscious by the fall after the double leg takedown, or he's made unconscious very early in the series of punches. But either way, the guy is unconscious. And this Roger Jackson hits him over and over as hard as he can, or very, very hard. I don't know how hard he can hit, but very, very hard. In the face and chin, they said something like 22 or 23 times. They said Psycho Stu had to be taken to the hospital. He had his teeth knocked out of his mouth. He was unconscious. We woke up and was in terrible shape. He had no memory of it. He had trouble speaking. He had trouble walking. I mean, it was a really horrific thing that happened to him. And it's not surprised that the results were horrific, because when you see it, it's awful. It's awful. And look, there's more to the story. Like the fact that, like, after this happened and Psycho Stu is laying there unconscious, another wrestler goes to pin him and the referee counts 3, as if we're still doing a wrestling match. And like, there's much more to talk about if you really want to get into the weeds here of just like how absurd so much of this is and how in bad taste a lot of it is, and how there's problems with management. Now, there's problems with a lot going on. But at the center of it all, a guy was taking part in an art form in which people entrust others to not hurt them. The whole art form of professional wrestling is, I'm going to allow you to do these moves to me because you're telling me when you do them, you're not going to hurt me. Whether one guy can beat up the other guy or not is not what professional wrestling is, and it certainly isn't now, right? It's, hey, I'm allowing this to happen because this is the story that we're telling. Even if that wasn't the case, even if you didn't, and that's not a difficult thing to understand, and that's not something that anybody in 2025 doesn't understand. Anybody who's over the age of 10 in 2025 is aware what they're watching when they're watching professional wrestling, and have been. It's been that way for decades. But even if it wasn't that way, in any situation, the idea of punching a man repeatedly in the face very, very hard while he's unconscious, there's no excuse. There's never an excuse for it. There's only a victim and a perpetrator. And that's all there is in a situation like this. You know, and you know, you can ask bigger scoping, broad questions about all of it, but ultimately, to me, it's a story of two people, one who shouldn't have had this happen to him, and the other who shouldn't have done it to him. And that's genuinely all there is to it, and there should be ramifications for it. Like, I mean, if this had happened in a street fight, you couldn't have passed this off as just regular street fight stuff. You would have been like, that guy's out of control. So the idea that it happened in a pro wrestling ring makes it worse, in my opinion, than if it had happened on a street fight. You know, I this really, like, watching this and watching everybody's perspective and watching all the different clips, everything that I've seen, and I'll correct myself later if I'm wrong, but everything that I've seen, there's no doubt in my mind, Roger Jackson is 100% at fault for these actions, and that's it. It's really not that complicated. And are there other people at fault involved in this scenario for other things? Sure. But there's no sort of gatekeeping going on here that complicates this, other than a guy was unconscious and another guy punched him in the face over and over again in an environment in which people are trusting others with their bodies. That's it. That's all there is to it. And there's no way you could tell me one person didn't understand this or one person didn't understand that. That's it. And there should have been people there to pull him off quicker. And there should, but regardless, He should have gotten off quicker. That's it. Like, so, that's kind of how I saw it. It was disgusting. It was awful. It was horrible. To try to get back to some wrestling, a couple things that I enjoyed that I haven't spoken about yet is I liked AEW taking over the ECW Arena, the former ECW Arena, now the 2300 Arena. AEW started their residency at the 2300 Arena over the week, and I loved the Taz tribute that they did. It was they did it, I think, just for YouTube. I think they did it after the Dynamite taping, but it was really, really good. And having Hook out there and Taz's wife and the fans that were in that building, and just, I mean, it's hard to explain how great Taz was in ECW and how important he was to ECW. And I feel like that gets lost sometimes. I think that people, they remember sort of Sandman and Sabu, and they remember the chair swinging and the beer drinking and the Singapore cane. But like, Taz was on a different level. The believability that Taz carried into the ECW Arena every time he walked in was like no one else. There was no main eventer like Taz in peak ECW. I'm talking 96, 97, 98, even 99, probably 97, 98, 99 Taz. Nobody better. I mean, just the best, to the point where you go back and watch. Go watch the end of 99. Go watch Taz's last match in ECW. He walks in as the ECW champion. I believe it's a triple threat with Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka. But the way ECW did triple threats, they did three-way dances where it was elimination style. So it wasn't just first pinfall wins. It was first pinfalls and elimination, then the last two wrestle until there's only one guy left. And Taz got eliminated early in the match and was eliminated first. And it was unheard of, and it shocked everybody. And they stopped the match so that the locker room could come out and congratulate Taz, and that everybody could come out and thank Taz for everything that he had done for ECW. And then they continued on to move forward with the product the way wrestling should be. But yeah, man, I mean, I just can't, which is why there was so much anticipation when Taz showed up at the Royal Rumble in 2000. It's why he got the victory over Kurt Angle. Like, because of this lore that he carried with him from ECW. Just the best. So I loved seeing that. I think, and to me, the other than the programming, in terms of the aesthetic, the entryway is awesome. The way it's against that flat wall, the way it's wide open like that, really, really cool. And it's sort of well lit, which, there's some shots that I don't love because it looks it almost looks like the Impact Zone. But then when they go to the wider shots and you get to see that building and you realize it really is, because it's changed so much, but you see its guts. And you see little things that remind you of what that arena looked like in 97 and 96, 95. And you go, yeah, that's the ECW Arena. It's awesome. Also, Sami Zayn winning the United States Championship. We did an emergency podcast about it. Sami Zayn won the United States Championship on SmackDown. He beat Solo Sikoa, I think, much to some people's surprise. And look, I said on the emergency podcast that I really believe that it's time to separate Solo Sikoa and Sami Zayn and the whole group from Bloodline stuff. I think that there are unfair comparisons being made between the Bloodline and Solo and his MFTs. I think Solo is an incredible performer. I think he's been doing an incredible job. I think the problem is that he has a faction full of people that are brand new to the WWE, and they're being compared to what is in the conversation for the greatest faction in the history of professional wrestling. You're going to talk about the Horsemen, you're going to talk about the NWO, you're going to talk about DX, you're going to talk about the Bloodline. And so the fact that, like, Solo is technically starting this new thing and being compared to the Bloodline, I think it's unfair. But in order to get away from that, you kind of have to get him away from the story. That's the other thing. Like, having him still be in these rivalries with, like, Sami Zayn and Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu, it's like, it's still run off of this story. Which is why, for me, I'm going, okay, I don't think that the Wyatts need to have a rematch with the Street Profits after the pay-per-view. I think the Street Profits obviously have something else going on and maybe, about to separate. But I do think that, and I think that the Miz and Mello have their own thing going on. But I think that the Wyatts and the MFTs could get into something. The Wyatts are baby faces. The MFTs are heel. Like I said on the emergency podcast, I think having the Wyatts really give the MFTs a run for their money and have the MFTs have to build back from it. I think that it's something that at first could build up the Wyatts and then at the end of the day build up the MFTs to something that's not necessarily compared to the Bloodline, but maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. And then when it comes to Sami Zayn, I don't think Solo should be trying to get the title back. I don't think Jacob Fatu should be trying to get the title. I think that Sami's also not this underdog as a United States champion. He's a kind of top level main event guy. I almost think that Sami Zayn is not too far off from a John Cena type of United States champion, which is ironic because when John Cena was the United States champion and he did the U.S. Open Challenge, Sami Zayn coming from NXT was one of the first people to respond to it. But I think Sami Zayn kind of wrestling younger guys, Sami Zayn giving people an opportunity against him, Sami Zayn, we've seen him be an underdog, but he wins matches. He's beaten Gunther. He's beaten all these people. He's main evented a pay-per-view with Roman Reigns, and it was one of the biggest Roman Reigns matches ever. I mean, at least in the top 5 for sure. So I kind of think that Sami is in the position where he doesn't have to be the underdog, especially not in the United States Championship division. And he can pay it forward and start wrestling younger guys and telling a completely different story on SmackDown. So yeah, that's where I land on all of that. I would love to hear what you thought of everything. Clash in Paris, everything that's happened since then, everything that happened before then, whatever you want to talk about. Email me. It's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. My email address is notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Let's go to John and Chelsea writing together. They wrote into notsamwrestling@gmail.com. John and Chelsea, they write, with Naomi out on maternity, Raw really only has one woman heel in Becky Lynch. Raquel and Roxanne are heels, but they are not there yet with the aura needed to headline. Well, I don't know. I actually think you're undervaluing Roxanne. If you just twisted that group and instead of them being a tag team, it was Roxanne as a singles with Raquel backing her up, I think she could get pretty far pretty quick. They're teasing Asuka turning heel and Bayley going crazy, but what Raw really needs is a character who can drive stories, and that's Liv Morgan. She needs to, she's injured, dude. It's not like they're going yeah, forget Liv Morgan, let's not do it. She's injured. It is what it is. And also, I don't think she's going to be a heel when she gets back. I think she's going to be a babyface when she gets back. I think that Liv will probably be a babyface. She's been a heel for a long time. I think she'll be a babyface. And Roxanne will be the heel to Liv Morgan's babyface. She needs to return to Raw and manage, even if she's not cleared to wrestle. I would like to see the Judgment Day really finish the Dom versus Finn storyline in which Liv is the key plot point between them. And either they go solo, but to me, they should finally kick out Finn, leading to Judgment Day led by Liv and Dom. If you're telling, and the twist is Roxanne betrays Finn and stays with the Judgment Day, allowing Liv to manage both Roxanne and Raquel to new heights with her mic skills, dude, that would kill Finn Balor. And the Judgment Day would turn babyface. Or Finn would just have to come and kill all of them. And then he could be a babyface, but then what would you do with the rest of them? Then she can wrestle in a couple months and we'll already have none of this really does anything for the women's division. This would all be this story would revolve around Finn Balor getting thrown out. And Finn Balor would team with this isn't a women's division story. This is a Judgment Day story. I think that if you just have Roxanne, if you're really looking for a heel to get bumped up, you have Roxanne get bumped up, and you have Raquel be her manager. You can bring up people from NXT, by the way. You've got a whole roster full of people. in NXT that are ready to come up. You know, I don't. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as something that has happened. You know, it's not like they were like, I mean, Naomi got pregnant. So it was like, oh, Naomi's pregnant. Let's figure out what to do next. And I think, like, just wait till Raw. Because they said they're going to let Stephanie Vaquer know who her opponent's going to be in that women's championship match. And obviously, Stephanie Vaquer is going to need an opponent. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Asuka, you know, with the way that Asuka's going after Rhea. But, like, if you have Asuka as a heel, Roxanne as a heel, you know, you have Becky as a heel, you bring people up from NXT or whatever, I think you're going to be okay. You know, I don't know that bringing Liv back to manage Roxanne and Raquel, yeah, I don't know. Pacho from Ecuador writes in, this retirement tour has been perfect. The John Cena retirement tour? I hate when people look at Cena since SummerSlam and say we should have had this Cena for the entire year and the heel turn was a waste of time. No, it wasn't. Okay, I'm listening. Working as a heel in his early matches, slow, methodical cheating allowed Cena to slowly get rid of his ring rust. I agree with that. That's what I was saying about, like, I don't know that we would have gotten classics the whole year long. I 100% believe that Cena is only able to have the bangers that he has because he's been wrestling for the whole year. That's possible. 2, the heel turn allowed for once-in-a-lifetime scenarios, like a heel pipe bomb. Okay, we've been saying the same stuff, bro. We've been saying the same stuff. And 3, less is more. I can firmly say that these final appearances will be... You know what, Pancho? You're probably listening to this podcast and listen to what I said before, going like, yeah, we're on the same page. Good email. Thomas writes in, Sami, whoop, whoop. Have you ever had the Paducah conversation with Ricochet? I lived in Paducah in the early 2000s when Ricochet and Chuck Taylor were tearing it up in the Southern Illinois wrestling scene. I never went to any of the matches because I was a poser, but I did work at Suncoast with a guy that wrestled under the name Como White. Yes, after the Marilyn Manson song. Whatever happened to that guy? I don't know what happened to that guy, but yes, I have spoken to Ricochet about summering in Paducah. I did summer in Paducah when I was growing up on Ken Lake. Let's see. It's a long one. Let's go to Tyler in Kentucky. My question is brief. Do you think that John Cena still being introduced / referring to himself as the last real champion diminishes Cody's current run as champion at all? Since Cena is a babyface now, and there was a definite passing of the torch moment, it just seems like the last real champion stuff is a little out of place and out of character. What are your thoughts? Here's the thing. Think about how you feel. Think about how you feel when you watch the show. Are you just listening to words and going like, well, like sometimes we listen to words and we act as if we're reading it on paper and going, yeah, I could feel this way, so I do feel this way. It doesn't take anything away from Cody. He's calling himself the last real champion as a nod. The never seen 17 is just this, like, he set the record at holding the title 17 times. You know, as soon as Cody gets back, there's nothing about this that's taking away from Cody's run at all, and I think you know that. I think if you tell me how you feel about it, do you actually feel like this takes away from Cody's run? And you would probably tell me no. But he says that thing, and it could, right? I suppose it could, but if it doesn't, then it doesn't, right? So that's kind of where I stand on it. Kaysen writes in, been a long-time listener. Over the years, your brand has grown with having more shows and appearances. I've always been curious, how do you do it all? If you don't mind, on a WWE PLE weekend, what does your schedule look like from prep time, travel, podcast recording, editing Raw recap, Sirius XM shows, and having family personal time? Just curious if we could get a glimpse into what your time looks like each week. Okay, I'll tell you this weekend. So like, look, the benefit, well, there is even still prep time, right? Because I have my outlines that I write for my podcast, but I will. So let's start with on Thursday, I was with my family on vacation. We got home on Thursday during the day. Thursday during the day, we were chilling. I think about wrestling a lot, so I already have these thoughts going on in my head. I write notes constantly. I have notebooks around me all the time, so I'm just constantly writing stuff down that I'm going to use later. And on Thursday evening, I recorded my my preview podcast that I put up on YouTube and everything. And then went to bed, spent the morning with the family the next morning. Then I watched SmackDown with a VPN on Netflix. I watched it early, so that way I could kind of do my emergency podcast at like 6 o'clock, because then I could go out, get some dinner with my family after the international, because SmackDown was off by like 4, got dinner with the family, came back, recorded the emergency podcast, set it to go at 10 p.m., and hung out with the wife and everything. And then for like Clash in the Castle, the pay-per-view will be on at 2. So like I will have already started writing a few topics for the podcast, just, wherever I have a moment. And Megan will come over at the beginning of the PLE and we'll watch the PLE. Usually for Raw recap, same thing with this. We don't edit it. I don't have to edit that show, but I'll go down. We'll record it in the basement. We'll watch the show in real time. I'm writing notes the entire show. We'll start recording kind of immediately after the show. I've already got in my head where I want to go with everything. And then they send it off and they edit it. And if I have to do an emergency podcast, I do an emergency podcast right after. I mean, look, I'm constantly writing stuff down. I'm constantly watching stuff. And, I try to water whatever plant needs water the most. And, I spend as much time as I can with family. That's very, very important to me. And then at night, I'll watch my shows and I'll write things down. And then I'll read articles when I can read articles. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just do it. There's a lot of hours in the day. Here's one thing I don't do. I don't think about how many hours I'm using. And I don't think about what I have to do. I do one thing at a time. That's what I do. That's the secret to all of it. You do one thing at a time and you don't worry how long things take. You don't go, you go, today I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to write this down today, right? I'm going to get these videos ready to upload today. I'm doing this right now. And then, okay, the kids and my wife are going for a walk. Do you have time to go for a walk? Yeah, I do have time to go for a walk. And now I'm taking a walk. And then I'm watching this. And now I'm doing the show. I can't do this because I'm doing the show. That's what I'm doing. And I think that that's truly the secret. No multitasking. Don't do multiple things at once. I believe you can get so much more done if you do one thing at a time. But see, you got me off talking about wrestling and talking about myself. And so I've got to say goodbye. Make sure you're subscribed across all podcast feeds. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify and all that stuff. Listening on SiriusXM every day, Monday through Thursday, 12 to 2 p.m. You can listen on demand as well to Notsam Wrestling Live. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Notsam Wrestling. And we will see you again very, very soon here on Notsam Wrestling.